Howdy, y'all. My name is David Neumaier, a seminarian with St. Francis Xavier. And here's my question for this week. How many of you heard the expression, live like you were dying? Now, as I skimmed the lyrics of a song by that name, perhaps you've heard it, by Tim McGraw, I see that this is an expression that can be confusing. What does it mean for us to live as if we are dying? That question is at the core of something that we Catholics call Memento Mori. Memento Mori is Latin for the moment of death or death's moment, but it translates to something with a much deeper meaning. Our time on this earth is limited. We could die at any moment, and so this expression has taken many forms over the years of human existence. Memento Mori, live like it's your last day, and an oh too famous one from my teenage years, it is quite the perversion of its original intent, YOLO, aka you only live once. What most people think of when they hear the expression to live like you are dying is what Mr. McGraw expresses in his lyrics. Essentially, to start living by crossing things off your bucket list, whether that's skydiving, Rocky Mountain climbing, or bull riding, basically just having fun living life. And the expression YOLO, even though I believe, or at least I hope, it was mostly used ironically, was used before doing something objectively, let's say, unwise, like jumping from a roof or doing some parkour you are quite unprepared for. People have a lot of things they want to do before they die. There's so much to experience in this world, so why not explore it all? This falls back to what we talked about in the video about death, that so many people get caught up in life and pleasure as a way of giving life meaning, but as we learned before, that's not really what life is about. Now, I want to make something very clear. I'm not about to tell you to never have fun. Please do not walk away from this video thinking I never want you to have fun. Life is exciting and miraculous, not boring. I hope I proved that in my miracles video, but I will tell you that that's not the whole of it. In the death video, my main goal is to give you a sense of your death, what it is and what it will be, a separation of body and soul as the body remains on earth and the soul is lifted to heaven until the second coming of Jesus. I do not want anyone to fear death, as it genuinely should not be feared. And death, as I said before, gives life a transformed meaning, but how do we properly prepare for death? That is what Memento Mori is all about. At its core, Memento Mori is about preparing yourself for death constantly. The things we do in this life, like skydiving, or my personal favorite thrill, going on a roller coaster, are fun, and life is a gift and it should be enjoyed, but it should be done with our death in mind. This might sound a little bit morbid, but if you aren't ready to die before going on a roller coaster, you need to reorganize your priorities. If you've gone on a roller coaster in the past without being ready for death, I don't blame you, nor should you see yourself at fault for such a thing. My point is simply this: you should live like you will die tomorrow. This is something that Mr. McGraw gets pretty close in the latter half of the chorus of his song. He starts by being a better husband and a father, loving deeper, speaking sweeter, and forgiving. So when we say Memento Mori, we as Catholics are referring to that latter half. We should love, speak, pray, act, and forgive as though our next moment could be our last. And though this example is not exactly life and death, I want you to consider for a moment my own personal experiences, and likely your own as well. How many of us have seen someone asking for help at a street intersection while we are driving? I know I'm guilty, even with my experience giving to the poor, of ignoring them and trying to pass them by. But that's not what it means to live with death on our minds. What pains me even more is when I come back later and the person is no longer there. And so most of the time I try and make it a point that if I can supply any aid, any prayers, any comfort, any water or snacks I might have in my car, they're given right then and there when I see them, because I may not have a moment later. They may eventually move to another place. I must admit, I'm still not perfect at this. Our lives should be lived in the same way. If we need to get something done to be right with God, give to the poor, pray, go to Mass, it ought to be done as though our lives depended on it, because our lives do depend on it. St. James the Greater even encourages us in his letter, always speak and act as men destined for judgment under the law of freedom. In other words, always act with love, because as he continues, Merciless is the judgment on the man who has not shown mercy, but mercy triumphs over judgment. We only have one life. You do only live once. So live well, love well, give well. You may not get another chance. Live like you were dying. We ought to live, as St. Robert Bellarmine says in The Art of Dying Well, not for momentary things, such as roller coasters, skydiving, parties, or other thrills, but for eternal and everlasting things, such as for our souls, preparing them for love of God and love of neighbor. Each chapter title in his book sums up quite well what we ought to do. Strive to live well, die to the world, persevere in faith, hope, and charity, be ready to meet Christ, detach from worldly possessions, be sober, just, and pious, pray, fast, give, remember your baptism, use the gifts you receive in confirmation, receive the Eucharist worthily, confess your sins, honor the sacred, love, guard against sin, and resolve to die well. These are the things of great importance that we should be sure to do before our death. Memento Mori. Remember your death and be ready for it.